Welcome to Greater Good Radio Hawaii, where leaders inspire leaders. Greater Good Radio Hawaii is dedicated to social entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Evan Leong, and with me is my co-host, Carrie Leong.
Mahalo, Evan. Today's guest is John Otterson, Managing Director of SVB Capital. Please welcome to Greater Good Radio, John Otterson. Welcome to our show, John.
Thank you very much, Carrie.
So how did you get started in the investment industry?
You know, I grew up in a family that was entrepreneurial and lived with a father who was a serial entrepreneur. And through watching the entrepreneurial process of companies starting and growing and sometimes failing, I got involved in a couple different startups. And from there, I went back to business school. At business school, I came across a company called Silicon Valley Bank. Silicon Valley Bank was providing startup and emerging growth financing to high-tech and life science companies. And I thought that would be a great opportunity for me to learn about multiple business models and meet lots of high-level people, CEOs, CFOs, as we would help them through the Silicon Valley Bank. I've been with the organization for about 17 years, and now I'm in SVB Capital, which is the private equity arm of Silicon Valley Bank. That's where we have a fund of funds that invests in venture capital funds, as well as a direct investment fund that invests side by side with venture capital funds. And we also have a couple specialty debt funds that focus in this space as well.
So you've been with the banks through the thick and thin.
Through 17 years, we've seen some great times. We've seen some pretty difficult times. We've seen cycles that where different sectors come in favor. We saw the internet boom in the late 90s. We saw that drive quite a bit of interest in entrepreneurship and venture capital, followed by the slump that came in 2001, 2002. So today things are a little better than they've been over the last several years. We're cautiously optimistic about the environment.
Can you talk a little bit about the boom times where everything was just going through the roof? What did you guys learn from that, and then also from the crash?
You know, I think we were very fortunate through that boom. We stuck to what we really understood. And within the commercial banking effort of Silicon Valley Bank, which is where I was at the time, we maintained a focus on our what we did, our core competency. There were others that there was kind of a gold rush mentality that was going on at the time, and people looked to capitalize that by going beyond their core competency. And that caused quite a bit of pain during the correction, whereas during the correction, we hadn't gone strayed that far from what we knew. And so the correction wasn't as painful for us. I guess the biggest lesson there is to know what your core competency is, to focus on that, to innovate and change as business models change, but don't get caught up in market dynamics that aren't real.
So does it change the way that your strategy for the company is today?
You know, I think we've been fairly even-keeled throughout up and down times because we've seen so many different cycles that we don't get as excited in an up cycle, and we don't get as overly concerned in a down cycle. We've seen those patterns. So during the downturn that came in 2001, 2002, our organization invested heavily in people and systems, even though earnings were lean during those periods, because now as the market's coming back, that will give us an ability, a competitive advantage ahead of others who are in the space.
So what type of companies does SVB Capital invest in?
So in our co-investment fund or our direct investment fund, what we're looking to do is invest alongside the top venture capitalists across the globe, predominantly in the U.S., because that's where our relationships are. So we're looking for market-leading companies that are involved in various sectors that venture capitalists are interested in today. We're looking for...
Which sectors would those be?
So today you hear a lot about Web 2.0, which is kind of the next iteration, if you will, of the Internet. You hear about clean tech. You hear about other tech areas that are outside of what used to be really popular with telecom and software. We've seen an evolution away from those models where the top venture funds are looking off the beaten path for opportunities that haven't been played out yet. So it's really looking forward into the future. We hear a lot today about consumer facing. So I think a lot of that's driven by the success that Apple and Google and others have had by bringing technology to the consumer. If you think about it, in the 70s, the venture business was driven by bringing technology to the government. So you saw large supercomputer companies that were funded, that grew, tremendous spending by the government on technology. In the 80s and the 90s, you saw that it was the U.S. it was global corporations that were spending on technology. So you saw at first you saw mini computers and other enterprise level computers, and then that migrated into the personal computer and networks. Toward the end of the 90s, you really saw the consumer be where the spending on technology is happening, and that's certainly what's been driving a lot of technology spending today.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.